Hello again. In this video I want to talk about double stops. Now double stops are basically just pairs of notes played together, so something like this. That there is double stop. It's a pair of notes, perfect fourth apart in this case, first and second string being played at the 7th fret. And double stops crop up in various styles of music. They're just another technique, another way of playing, in the way that you've got hammer-ons and pull-offs and slides and slurs and harmonics and so on. You've got double stops. It's just something else you can do, another way you can play notes to make your solos sound a bit more interesting. And double stops crop up a lot in styles like blues, country especially, rock, but you'll find them in all styles. Rock and roll, you'll hear them a lot, like that Chuck Berry inspired bit that I played at the start. And what I'm going to do in this video is just give you a few ideas for things you can try. Now the most common way I think I hear double stops being played is that rock and roll style where we're playing a perfect fourth. And that works quite nicely on a guitar, because of the way the guitar's tuned. Generally you can get the perfect fourth by playing adjacent strings at the same fret. Only exception to that is the second and the third string, where rather than playing at the same fret, the second string you'll be playing a fret higher to give you that perfect fourth. Generally speaking, adjacent strings at the same fret will give you that perfect fourth, and that's quite a nice way of thickening out a line that you're playing. So if you think about this riff, which should be fairly familiar to you. Play that, but play it with the same fret, the next string down, double it up, we'll get something that sounds much thicker. That should sound familiar to you. So that's a double stop technique being used there, where you're using two notes, and it just gives you a fatter sound. In terms of how to play these, there's different ways you can approach it. If you play with a pick, what you can do is just pick both strings. It's a fairly obvious sort of way of saying we're going to play a double stop, but we've got the pick. What we're going to do is just bring the pick down and hit the lower string of the pair and the highest string of the pair together. Another way you could play it, this is something that I sometimes do, is when I'm holding my pick between my thumb and my index finger, is I actually use the nail on my index finger to strike the highest string in the pair. So as I'm holding the pick there, the pick is going to strike the lowest string of the pair, and the nail, the back of the nail on the back of my hand, back of my finger, is going to brush against the top string in the pair, and play the double stop like that. Another way you might see it done is actually using separate fingers. This works quite nicely. If you're holding your pick between your thumb and your index finger, it leaves your middle and ring fingers free, so you could use those two just to pluck. So the middle finger on the lower string and the ring finger on the higher string, and just pick the strings with your fingers. So the different ways you can play the two strings together. Experiment, see what works for you. If you're predominantly a pick player, or you're predominantly a fingerstyle player, some techniques will probably work better for you than others. So experiment and see what works best for you. So when you hear a double stop, what you're actually hearing is a harmonic interval. You're hearing two notes being played together. And if you remember when we looked at intervals, we've done some previous videos about intervals in music. Put some links down there in the information section on YouTube. Talking about intervals, we said that each interval has its own distinctive sound. The gap between the two notes in the interval gives it a certain consonance or dissonance, a feeling of resolution, or when it can move on somewhere. And when you play two notes together simultaneously, that's what's called a harmonic interval. and that's what you're hearing when you play a double stop. Now, what we're playing as examples there were perfect fourths. Another way that you might hear double stops being used, and particularly in a jazz context, is to hear notes being played an octave apart. I'm not particularly brilliant at this, but I'll give you a quick example to give you an idea. If you listen to Wes Montgomery, he does this sort of he used to do this sort of thing a lot. We're playing a note on the bass string and playing a note an octave higher, and you'll get. Or another way we could play that is playing the note on the top string and same note an octave lower, say on the fourth string. It's something like this. I think that sounds quite nice, quite jazzy there, using octave double stops. Now let's look at another lick using double stops. So the lick goes something like this. So we're playing perfect fourth double stops on the top two strings at the 5th and the 8th fret. We're playing what major third double stops by playing the 2nd and 3rd strings at the same fret at the 5th and 7th frets, and playing a perfect fourth double stop with the 2nd and 3rd strings at the 8th and 7th fret. And what I'm doing is moving the little finger down from the 8th fret to the 7th fret to go from a perfect fourth to a major third, and then bending both of those strings together, pulling off to the 5th fret on the 3rd string, and then just going up to the 7th fret on the 4th string. So there's a lick, something that hopefully acts as a bit of inspiration for you to go off and come up with your own double stop based licks. Now you'll notice on that last example I did a little bit of string bending, and string bending and double stops go together quite well. You'll hear this used a lot in country music. Now here's just a really basic example. What I'm going to do is end up at that perfect fourth type of double stop that we had, but I'm going to arrive there by way of a bend. So what I want to arrive at is this double stop here, the A and the E played at the 5th fret on the 1st and 2nd string. Now I'm going to use that 5th fret on the top E string to give me my A, but rather than using that E at the 5th fret on the 2nd string, what I'm going to do is play the 7th fret on the 3rd string and bend up by 2 semitones. So I want this note. What I'm going to do is go and arrive at it by way of a bend. And then as I get to the top of the bend, I'm going to strike the top string to give me that A, and that'll give me the double stop. So instead of getting, I'm going to play. My choice of guitar for this isn't accidental. I'm playing the Telecaster here. It's got a stop tailpiece. What I'm going to do now is swap over to a different guitar, and I'll show you why the use of a stop tailpiece or a hardtail is really important when you're doing string bending on double stops. Right, so back with my Thompson custom guitar, and this is quite a good example to show you because it's got a Floyd Rose locking tremolo. And this is set up floating, so it means I can play a note, push down on the bar and make it go lower, or pull up on the tremolo arm to make it go higher. So basically what's happening is, attached to the tremolo block inside the body cavity there's a set of strings that counterbalance the tension in the guitar strings themselves. And when I move the tremolo arm I'm raising or lowering the pitch of the strings and balanced against those springs in the body. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play the top E string and I'm going to bend the third string. I'm not going to play the third string, I'm just going to bend it while I'm playing the top E string. Now listen to what happens to the note on the top E string when I bend a different string. Can you hear that? As I'm bending that third string, I'm increasing the tension in it. And what that's doing is it's pulling the tremolo slightly. It's similar as if I was actually pushing down on the tremolo arm, and that's making the other strings go slightly flat. And this is what you need to bear in mind if you're doing like double stops and multi-string bending licks on a guitar with a tremolo. Is you need to be aware that as you're bending one string, the other strings will actually go out of tune, so you might need to compensate for that. That can get a wee bit complicated, so ideally if you can get away with playing that sort of thing on a stop tailpiece guitar, or something that's got a hard-tailed trem, then you don't need to worry about the strings going out of tune. Right, so that's just a quick introduction to double stops, what they are, and a few ideas for ways you can play them. As always, I'd encourage you to go away, experiment, practice, come up with ideas of your own and incorporate them into your own playing. If you're playing rock, jazz, blues, rock and roll, a whole load of styles benefit from having double stops in your style vocabulary, so it's worth getting to grips with them and including them in your playing. So practice, experiment, have fun. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video next time. Bye for now.